All right. Are you ready to send your kids back to school without the stress and worry? I know that might sound too good to be true, but here's the deal. No matter how old, what grade, or what type of school your children attend, it is possible for you to send them back without the worry and the stress. But what I want you to know is that it's totally natural and normal to feel that way. But if you decide that it's getting in the way of you living your best life, then this masterclass is for you. I'm here in Minnesota where school is set to start next week. I know many of you have already started, so let's get to it. I want you to be able to use this masterclass throughout the entire year, but I don't want one more minute to go by before you understand why you are feeling the stress and the worry in the first place. So I want you to jot down any notes that you have during this quick presentation. I will give you a way to get those questions answered at the end. Have your workbook in front of you. I included a link. It's just a PDF download that you can print off. Utilize this workbook. I have put tons of time into making sure that this is a reference material for you to go back to. It becomes a resource that is so valuable when you actually put the work into it. Okay, so why am I bringing you this lesson right now? Well, obviously, it is the season where we all send our kids back to school, but I also do not want one more minute to go by before you know how to better understand why you are in this perpetual spin that feels so stressful, has you feeling so out of control. This class is important because every minute of every day, we are actively, unintentionally sabotaging our own well-being, which in turn has effects on other people like our kids. That self-sabotage feels exhausting and it's terrifying. But here's the good news. With a simple system and a little bit of awareness of when to use the system, you will eliminate the unnecessary suffering and stop unintentionally sabotaging your well-being. I have used this very system that I'm about to teach you to heal relationships with my family and friends, to lose weight, to stop over drinking. And I use this system to create a business that has now gone on to impact thousands of lives. I learned how to use myself as the solution to all of my problems. And then I started using the same system to go after things that I never thought possible. This very tool was my safety net when it came to overcoming problems like under-earning, overspending, and yelling at my kids. And then it became my key to unlocking the universe and achieving things that I never thought possible. I'm going to teach you this same system so that you can decide what it is that you want right now, so that you can discover what has kept you from it, and helping you to go on to create more forgiveness, love, and patience. You will create the simple steps that you need to take to achieve what it is that you want most. This system will become your safety net and eventually become your key to unlocking the universe. And you might be thinking, well, if this is so simple, why haven't I done it before now? Well, I'm 51 years old and I only started utilizing this system a few short years ago. So you're never too old, you're never too young, you're never too broken. The reason you haven't used this system is because you have never been taught. And you might have been too afraid to even search for the real answer. So today we're going to make a quick commitment before we go any further. I want you to make a decision to be willing to be uncomfortable. This will be unlike anything you've ever experienced, and it will be uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to look fear in the face and be willing to do one thing. Ask yourself some questions. It's really that easy. Be willing to ask yourself some questions that will create quantum leaps towards what it is that you really want. My name is Tracy Plushcourt. I'm the founder of Self-Made You. My goal is to make Self-Made You a household name by equipping people with the one skill that has changed every single outcome in my life. And that skill is trusting and relying on yourself as the solution. No longer thinking of yourself as the problem, thinking of yourself as the solution. And I'm going to show you how. So before we go any further, I want to talk about what the real problem is. When it comes to this time of year, when we send our kids back to school, what's the real problem? Because the mind-blowing answer is it's not circumstances like the rise in COVID cases or other illnesses that your child might be exposed to. I know that that's a fear. I know that's a real fear, but that's not the problem. Or the concern that you have over those looming report cards that might show lower grades than you had hoped for. Or the fears that you have around bullying and peer pressure. Or watching your child struggle to make friends in a new school environment and feeling helpless about helping them adjust. Or hearing your child express concerns about not fitting in or having anyone to talk to during lunch or recess. Or seeing your child stressed and overwhelmed by the heavy workload or class schedule and the multiple extracurricular activities. Or worrying about what kind of healthy options your kids might have in the cafeteria. And if there are those healthy options, will they even choose them? It's not even the problem around excessive screen time or the time that your child spends on social media before you get home from work, or the infrequent communication from teachers that leave you wondering and worrying about your child's progress. None of those are the real problem. The real problem is kind of ironic because it has a lot to do with school, but not in the way that you think. The real problem has to do with our educational experience. As the parent, the educational experience that we had, because our formal education did not include a curriculum on how to use your mind to solve the above mentioned kinds of problems. And without that education, we operate on default and we react from pain like stress and overwhelm, leading to self-sabotaging behaviors instead of responding with control. So I want you to consider that our formal education system might ultimately be responsible for our inability to thrive mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. It's created a lack of self-control and reliance, ultimately leading to all sorts of blame and a polarizing culture. But we're going to solve that today. We are going to fill in the voids. So the question becomes, what specific problem do you want to solve, or what goal do you want to achieve with what you're about to learn? So I want you to turn the page to where it says decide. Okay. Why is it important to decide? Well, first off, it creates awareness. How do you know you have a problem if you don't decide what it is that you want? So, what is the problem that you want to solve or the subject that you want to change? Is it your child's health and safety, or is it their academic performance? Or is it the bullying or the peer pressure that they might be exposed to? Is it the financial pressure related to tuition and all of the other back to school costs? Is it their emotional well-being, their friends, and their ability to manage time and commitments? Which specific problem or subject do you want to focus on? And now I want you to ask yourself, what bothers you most about that circumstance? Is it, what if they get sick? I can't bear the thought of them being exposed to any illness. Or is it, will they remember how to follow safety measures and precautions? Or is it, what if they struggle in their studies? Am I doing enough to help them with homework? Or is it their future depends on their grades, and what if they fall behind? Are you bothered most by the fear of them becoming a target for bullies? How will they handle those kind of situations? And that peer pressure, it can be so intense. Will they make the right decisions? Or does it bother you that starting a new grade is a big change and you're bothered by this worry of whether they're going to fit in and make friends? What if they feel lost and overwhelmed in this new environment? Are they really okay? I can't always tell what's going on in their minds. I hope they're not bottling up their emotions. What if they're struggling and I don't know it? Or are you bothered by whether or not they'll find friends who actually treat them well? Friendships can be so unpredictable. What if they feel left out or isolated? And then balancing schoolwork and after school sports can be tough. What if they burn out? How will they manage their time wisely? And then, of course, we're all bothered by healthy food choices or the lack thereof. Fast food and unhealthy snacks are absolutely everywhere. What if they develop poor eating habits? And it's hard to keep track of their screen time. What if they encounter something that's totally inappropriate or it's dangerous? Or will I be able to stay connected with their teacher? I want to know how they're doing. Or what if important issues slip through the cracks because I'm not in constant contact with the teachers, or I'm too busy or too distracted with work and all of the other responsibilities that I have? Or maybe what bothers you most is what your kids are going to think if you have to tell them no, or that you can't afford to invest in the new clothes or the fees associated with the sports. What bothers you most about the circumstance that you want to change? Be honest with yourself. Take a few minutes and write down your answer. And then finally, I want you to ask yourself how you would ideally want to feel, even if none of the circumstances changed. In an ideal world, how would you like to be feeling right now about sending your kids back to school? We know the circumstance of you sending them back is probably not going to change. So how is it that you want to feel? And here's why it's important you answer all of these questions. Because if you don't decide what it is that you want because you're afraid, you essentially fail ahead of time. But when you have a goal or an objective, your brain goes to work finding the ways to stop hiding and stop quitting. Deciding is like a GPS. You've got to enter in where it is that you want to go in order for it to accurately give you the steps to get there. So making a decision about what problems you are solving or goals you want to achieve, this is the antidote to fear and frustration. And it's the first step to creating lasting change. So I want you to just take a quick minute and jot down the first answers that come to mind when you ask yourself those questions. And then when you're ready, turn the page. This next worksheet is going to prompt you to better understand and heighten your awareness around why you haven't yet achieved what it is that you want most. So I want you to answer the question, why do I want to solve this problem? Do I want to ensure my child's well-being and ensure that it's a top priority, providing me peace of mind and allowing them to focus on learning and growth? Maybe I want to solve this problem because I want my child to excel academically. I want it to open up doors to future opportunities, setting a strong foundation for lifelong achievement. Or maybe I want to solve this problem because I want to protect my child from bullying, and I want to foster emotional well-being, confidence, and a positive attitude towards school. I want to ensure a seamless transition to a new grade or a new school environment. And I want them to feel a sense of belonging and reduced stress. I want to nurture their emotional health and encourage a positive mindset, leading to better focus and more engagement in school. I want to help them foster healthy relationships and social skills. And I want their overall growth and self-esteem to keep progressing. I want to teach them effective time management that prevents burnout and promotes a balanced lifestyle. I want to instill good eating habits so that they have more energy and that they have the nutrition needed to perform well academically and physically. I want to guide my child to use technology that cultivates responsible behavior. And I want them to learn how to maintain a healthy balance between screen time and other activities. I want to stay connected with their teacher and help them to address challenges promptly and support my child's academic journey. So answer that question of why do you want to solve this problem? And then next, I want to know if you're willing to be uncomfortable. This process, like I said earlier, will be uncomfortable because it's unusual, right? It's not the everyday experience that you're used to having. If you're going to try something new, it's going to feel foreign, right? But discomfort isn't to be feared. It's scary to think and feel and act differently, intentionally, but change begets change. And I'm willing to be vulnerable, and I want you to be willing to be vulnerable, to look that fear in the face and recognize fear is an emotion that you are very capable of feeling. And it's okay to be vulnerable and to be afraid and to let other people know that you're uncomfortable, but you're doing this because you want to feel better. And then I want you to ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario? It's really important to know what this kind of scenario is that you have created from your fear-based brain, because it is very dramatic, but get it out of your head and put it onto paper so you can look at it objectively. This worst case scenario is where you're at actually right now. As you are spinning out in fear of being judged by your family or your peers or by the teachers, as you're worrying about what other people will think, or whether you are losing respect, or if your child will think that you're a failure or that they have failed, or if people will think that you are a bad mom. These are all hypothetical states of worry and fear that keep us from moving forward. Get it in black and white on paper so that you can see it objectively. Most parents have this worst case scenario that sounds like my child might fall significantly behind in their studies and struggle to catch up. And this could manifest as consistently getting poor grades across all subjects. And then that's going to lead to a lack of confidence and motivation. It's totally normal. I hear it all the time. Parents fear that their child might develop a negative self-perception and it will impact their entire life and their ability to learn, which then will limit their future opportunities for higher education and career opportunities. It's a worst case scenario, right? But when you get it down on paper, you can be way more objective about it. I want you to look at the worst case scenario that is very dramatic and unlikely to happen, and decide that if it in fact does happen, you are equipped to handle it then. But spinning out and worrying about it right now, being consumed with this hypothetical situation, is not helpful. Okay, the next question: in what ways are you responsible for the worry and the stress that you're experiencing? We are so quick to place blame outside of us, which limits the amount of control that we feel. When we're blaming somebody else, or we're blaming a circumstance for the stress that we're feeling, we are giving up all of the control. But if we can take even 10% responsibility, we start to crack the door open to feeling in control. So answer that question. What are you doing or not doing? What's the negative self-talk that exists in your head? Are you judging yourself? Are you judging others? Are you judging the circumstance? Are you able to look at all of the factors involved objectively? If the answer is no, then you can take a little bit of the responsibility for how it is that you're feeling about back to school. So just answer that question. In what ways are you responsible for the experience that you're having? So we've created an awareness of what you want and where you're at right now in relation to where it is that you want to be. Now I want to teach you a little bit of neuroscience about your brain. And I want to emphasize again, you are not broken. You are very normal. You just haven't learned how to operate that self-made mind of yours to get what it is that you want. We are taught what to think, and then we're tested on our ability to memorize information. We were never taught to recognize thoughts that are sabotaging us. And why are they sabotaging us? Because they're being created from the primitive part of our brain. And instead of questioning those thoughts, we react often in an unintentional, autopilot, subconscious way. Here's why this happens. Our primitive brain wants to avoid pain. It wants to seek pleasure, and it wants to be efficient or expend as little energy as possible. We operate from our primitive brain on default. Out of the 60,000 thoughts we have a day, 80% or more of them are coming from our primitive brain, which creates moments, experiences, days, weeks, years, lifetimes of unwanted results. And because our brain wants to be efficient, 90% of the thoughts that we had yesterday are repeated today. There are 10 very common saboteur narratives that we most often listen to. The judge is the most universal. We judge ourselves, we judge others, and we judge circumstances all day long. And who does that affect? Us. We are the ones that feel the pain through that reactive way of listening to those sabotaging narratives. But we can't fight the enemy that we can't see. So we need to shine a light on those saboteur narratives that are running our life. That's why I included a saboteur assessment link on that agenda page. One of the very first pages of this workbook has a link to a saboteur assessment. I highly recommend taking that assessment. See what narratives you are listening to and how you are being impacted. And then I want you to send your results, just forward your results to me so I can give you a little bit of free coaching, okay? So take that assessment. It's totally free. It will change the way you're thinking about the thoughts and feelings that you're having. Okay, so now turn the page, because all of that is a pretty compelling argument for why you would want to learn how to operate from the other part of your brain. So as you can see here, the other part I call the prodigy brain. It's the more extraordinary part of your brain. Scientists and doctors would call it your prefrontal cortex. And it's the intentional side. It does not run on default. You have to command this side to activate or operate. This is the part of your brain that accesses empathy and discovery and innovation, and it provides you the opportunity to navigate through your values, utilizing your values, and take clear, concise, confident action. So, two parts of your brain, you operate by default from your primitive brain, and I want to teach you how to strengthen the prodigy part of your brain and to operate from that more intentional side. All right, turn the page. Okay, so now you finally know what is happening in your brain. You know why it's happening. You know what it is that you want and why you want it. Now let me teach you how to get it. It all starts by thinking of yourself as the solution, utilizing this 4-step framework. I want you to write down the description, the definitions of each component of this framework, all 4 steps. So we use the acronym SELF to be able to remember how to navigate this system. The S stands for self-coaching, learning to coach yourself. All this is the art of asking yourself questions. Okay, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? Now, it doesn't stop at asking. You have to answer those questions. That's the entirety of self-coaching, asking and answering questions. The E stands for eliminating self-sabotage. And like we just talked about, there are 10 self-sabotaging narratives that are very prominent. And once you know which ones are most prominent in your life, you can be on the lookout for them so you can intercept them. When you start to hear those narratives or when you start to feel the pain, you can question those thoughts. The third step is leveraging strengths. Now, these are strengths that are only available to you through your prodigy brain. These are the strengths that I just mentioned: empathy, discovery, innovation, navigation, activation. These are inherent strengths within you that if you are operating from your primitive brain, which again, by default, it is the strongest part of your mind, you will not have access to those strengths. So we teach you how to intentionally tap into those strengths and operate from the other side of your brain to get whatever it is that you want. And then finally, forging intentional results. This looks like making a decision every single day, operating with intention, deciding what are the best practices to get whatever it is that I want. Of course, you can Google best practices to losing weight, best practices to healing a relationship, best practices to reducing stress when I send my kids off to school. And what it's going to tell you is meditate, listen to music, pre-plan, use a planner, right? It's going to give you the best practice, all action-based. But you have to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success through self-coaching, eliminating the self-sabotage, and tapping into your inherent strengths before you get to those intentional results or taking the best practices. Okay? Anybody can take a list and check the boxes, but those results won't be sustainable if you are not setting yourself up for success by making sure that you're taking those actions from a place of confidence and control. Because if you aren't taking those actions from a place of confidence and control, you're probably taking them from desperation, and that will not lead to sustainable results. So this is the self-operating system that once learned and applied becomes your exclusive, unparalleled source of guidance. And with practice, it becomes a part of your DNA. Intentionally applying this way of operating strengthens your mental fitness, creating awareness, belief, and profound connection with yourself and with the people who matter to you most. You start to accept yourself and where you are currently at, and you start to create a relationship with yourself and others that fosters growth and encourages personal development. Ultimately, empathy, understanding, growth, and control over your experiences are all available to you. And it's easier to achieve utilizing this framework. The impacts of having self-control are profound. Teams, whether it's a sports team or a sales team, perform 31% better. People who are in sales sell 37% more. People live 10 years longer when they have self-control, and they're 3 times more creative. And the best part is that this operating system has unlimited applications. As a result of improving your mental fitness and feeling in control, you can create anything you want. You can send your kids back to school feeling confident, feeling in control, feeling willing to let them make their mistakes, willing to let them feel some responsibility and create resiliency. I coach many parents who have adopted this system and have created mind-blowing results. They have healed relationships with their children. They have created strong lines of communications. They have created boundaries around how each person is treated and what they are and are not willing to do for their child. Responsibility and resiliency becomes strengths that you recognize in your child as you become more patient, forgiving, and willing to let your child learn through their circumstances. Who wants those kinds of results? I know it's what I always wanted, but had never been taught. So turn the page. This operating system is what you've always needed to know, but it can't stop with insight. Insight is only 20% of lasting change. 80% is application, it's practice. It's the practice that will actively strengthen your mental fitness. So let's apply this to your scenario. If you were going to get coached, or if you were going to self-coach, coach yourself, you would first decide what problem you want to solve or a goal that you want to achieve. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you this first step to understanding yourself. So here's how you're going to ask great self-coaching questions. I want you to look back at that first page to determine what problem you want to solve. The first step in coaching yourself is exactly how I've guided you all the way to this page. So I want you to look back and tell me how you answered these questions. How are you feeling right now? You've decided what it is that you want, where you're at in relationship to where you want to be, why you want what it is that you want. I want to know, how are you feeling about where you're at right now? What are you afraid of? How are you showing up when you are operating from that fear? So if you are somebody who says, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to afford the fees associated with my child's extracurricular activities, and I'm terrified of telling them that, I want you to ask yourself, how do you show up when you are thinking and feeling that way? Do you hide from the situation? Do you take out another credit card? Do you get short with your child? Do you lie about the situation? How do you show up? And ultimately, what is that creating for you? So now you clearly know what it is that you want, where you are in relationship to that, and how your feelings are keeping you from actually achieving what it is that you want. I want you to also look at those next steps, eliminating that self-sabotage. Which saboteur is hijacking you? And how does this make sense? Your fears around money probably make perfect sense because you probably grew up in an environment where money might have been scarce and it was always a source of stress. It makes perfect sense that that's the way that you think and feel about money today. It makes perfect sense that you're making the lack of money mean something about you. But you don't have to believe any of those saboteur narratives that are coming from your primitive brain. You can actually question those thoughts. I love taking my clients through ways to eliminate that self-sabotage. Taking really big, deep breaths and exhaling. And doing that in a very rhythmic way to where they can calm their nervous system down so that they can think more clearly, so that they can tap into the strengths of their prodigy brain, so that they can ask themselves, what is the most loving and compassionate thing that you could say to yourself right now? It's totally normal to feel the stress and the worry when it comes to back to school. But you don't have to react from it. You can recognize it as the effect of your primitive brain. You can ask yourself, do I want to continue to feel this way? And if the answer is no, you have the system to create a different feeling from finding a believable thought that creates a much better feeling than the worry, than the stress, that will have you showing up in an entirely different way, creating an experience that's more enjoyable. It's 100% within your control. How do you want to think about the circumstance of lack of money at the beginning of the school year? You don't have to make it mean something about you. You don't have to make it mean that you're broken or that you're a bad parent. There are so many other ways to think about that circumstance that creates a feeling of empowerment, that creates a feeling of honesty, that will have you showing up in a way, maybe gaining some support, but hiding, buffering, numbing those feelings never work. It perpetuates the feeling of stress and worry. So the steps 2, 3, and 4 get you over that hump and into creating the life that you want. So I want you to turn the page because, of course, we don't have time to go through all 4 steps, but I want to just draw your attention to all of the resources that we have at Self-Made You. Every single successful person has a teacher, a coach, or a mentor that has pushed them, that has challenged them to get uncomfortable. It has been my pleasure to teach and coach you over this last hour. I would love to come alongside of you as you create the life, the experience that you want when it comes to sending your kids back to school. So I have openings on my calendar for free consults. These calls will be a 30-minute call where we can take your specific problem and we can do steps 2, 3, and 4 to get you all the way to feeling in control. I would be honored to be able to take you through the entirety of this process. That final page also gives you more resources and links that you can share with some of your friends. We would be honored if you would share our resources with your friends and family. And on that sheet, you will find the link to sign up for a free consult. So I know that the problems are as vast as the people who are watching this. So I would love the opportunity to have some one-on-one time with each and every one of you to help you overcome these challenges and finally feel in control. So thank you again for being here, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a one-on-one session. We'll talk to you soon.